At 4:42 a.m. on February 12, 2023, Border Inspector Frank Dalton's flashlight illumination paused on a secret steel enclosure inside a livestock vehicle behind the sealed metal, $15.4 million in rough diamonds, conveyed across the Rio Grande under syndicate instructions. The motorist's hands quivered, the Badlands wind wailed, and Frank understood if he revealed this, he'd be eliminated before daybreak. Instead, he selected a different option. This narrative is going to consume exactly 14 minutes to relate, and you won't believe where it terminates. Before we start, please click that subscribe button and give this account a like. It helps me continue bringing you more unbelievable true crime episodes. You won't want to miss a single development in Frank Dalton's chronicle. But this chronicle didn't originate with a desperate hauler stealing millions from the criminal syndicate. It originated 3 years before with a standard delivery task that would uncover the biggest illicit financial scheme in the Southwest and convert an ordinary hauler into the most pursued thief on 2 continents. Billy Crawford had been piloting trucks for 30 years when he stepped into the narrow office of Southwestern Logistics on a sweltering Tuesday morning in June 2021. The enterprise operated out of a converted trailer behind a truck facility in Las Cruces, New Mexico. No signage, no marketing, just verbal referrals among haulers who didn't raise too many queries about dubious merchandise. "You Billy?" questioned the clerk, a stocky woman with exhausted eyes. "Carlos has been awaiting you since 9. He despises being delayed." Carlos Mendez resembled every other mid-level criminal manager Billy had encountered over 3 decades on the highways. Expensive footwear, thick gold chain around his neck, restless energy that came from handling other people's capital. He assessed Billy with the experienced eye of someone who'd recruited hundreds of haulers and dealt harshly with those who failed him. 30 years on the highways? Carlos questioned, scanning through Billy's work record with groomed fingernails. "I notice here you've moved everything from furniture to heavy equipment. Any merchandise you won't handle?" 32 years next month," Billy answered, settling into a plastic chair that had experienced better decades. "Clean record, no accidents, no DUIs, no missed shipments. As for merchandise, I don't raise questions and I don't open containers. Your business is your business." Carlos smiled for the first time, displaying gold caps on his front teeth. "Right answer. We need reliability above everything else. The routes are simple. Pickup to delivery, sealed containers, no stops except fuel, and mandatory dot rest periods. You follow the escort vehicle, maintain radio contact, and deliver on schedule." Billy nodded slowly. In hauler terminology, that meant illegal goods, drugs, stolen items, maybe untaxed cigarettes or firearms, nothing he hadn't moved before during harder times. The key was maintaining plausible deniability. Officially, he never knew what was in the containers. "Payment is $2,000 per route, cash," Carlos continued, leaning back in his chair. "No paperwork, no tax forms, no bank deposits. You take the money and forget where you got it." Questions? $2,000 cash was generous for a standard route, but not excessively high enough to suggest valuable merchandise. Low enough to avoid attracting federal attention. Billy had seen this setup before. "What kind of cargo am I hauling?" Billy asked, knowing the answer would be deliberately vague. "The kind that pays $2,000 cash per route," Carlos replied, his smile disappearing. "The kind where smart haulers don't ask follow-up questions." Billy understood the message. Don't ask. Don't tell. Collect your money and keep your mouth shut. It was an arrangement that had worked for both sides throughout the Southwest for decades. "When do I start?" "Tonight. Pick up at Warehouse 17 outside El Paso. Delivery to Phoenix. Simple route, straight shot on I-10. Should take 8 hours, including your mandatory rest break." That first job should have been Billy's final job. The warehouse sat in an industrial zone that looked more like a military installation than a shipping facility. Razor wire-topped 20-foot concrete walls. Security cameras tracked every angle. Armed guards waved him through steel gates that belonged in a maximum security prison, not a freight depot. The guards weren't ordinary security either. These were tough men with military bearing and serious weapons. They checked Billy's identification against a list, examined his truck thoroughly, and escorted him to the loading dock with professional precision. 2 containers got loaded onto his flatbed trailer, standard 40-foot shipping units, but significantly heavier than normal. The paperwork listed industrial equipment weighing 18,000 pounds per container. Billy's onboard truck scale showed closer to 25,000 pounds each. Whatever was inside those containers, it definitely wasn't industrial equipment. Carlos climbed into a black Chevrolet Suburban that would escort Billy to Phoenix. 2 more vehicles joined the convoy, a Ford pickup truck with tinted windows and a Cadillac Escalade. 3-car escort for cargo supposedly worth $50,000 according to the shipping manifest. $50,000 in industrial equipment needs a 3-car escort and armed guards, Billy muttered as they rolled through the warehouse gates onto I-10. Either these guys are extremely paranoid or I'm hauling something worth a hell of a lot more than they're telling me. The run went smoothly despite Billy's growing suspicions. Delivery to a high-end metals dealer in Scottsdale, another facility with serious security. The business looked legitimate, expensive office building, professional staff, proper licensing displayed prominently. But the receiving dock was isolated from the main building, and Billy never saw the actual container contents during unloading. Cash payment, firm handshake, drive home easy money if you could live with not knowing what you were transporting and not caring about the legal implications. For 6 months, Billy made the run twice a week without incident. El Paso to Phoenix, El Paso to Las Vegas, occasionally El Paso to Albuquerque. Always the same setup: sealed containers, armed escort, cash payment. He banked $48,000 in 6 months, more than he'd made in the previous 2 years. Combined driving legitimate freight. Billy noticed problems with each run. The container seals were cheap plastic zip ties instead of secure steel seals. Routes avoided checkpoints and used specific truck stops. Delivery points were precious metals dealers, perfect money laundering fronts. Carlos and his men spoke Spanish, assuming Billy wouldn't understand, but he caught keywords: lavado, washing, banco, bank, oro limpio, clean gold. They were discussing industrial-scale financial crimes. The night everything changed started exactly like any other routine delivery. Billy pulled into the Sierra Blanca truck stop around midnight for fuel and his mandatory DOT rest break. Federal regulations required 8 hours off duty after 11 hours driving, plenty of time for Carlos to handle whatever mysterious business he conducted at these carefully selected stops. While Billy checked his tire pressure and performed his routine pre-trip inspection, he noticed something that made his blood run cold. The container seals weren't just cheap plastic. They were obviously tampered with. Fresh cuts in the plastic had been crudely repaired with matching zip ties, but the repair work was clearly recent. "Someone's been inside these containers," Billy whispered to himself, crouching beside the trailer in the dim security lighting. Recently. Maybe within the last few hours. That's when he heard Carlos talking on his phone near the diesel pumps, voice raised in obvious frustration and anger. Billy's Spanish comprehension was good enough to catch the important parts of what sounded like a heated argument. $12 million in each container, Swiss gold bars and clean bills. Casino manager expects exact count by morning. Any shortage comes out of our percentage. No excuses this time. Billy's hands went completely numb as the full implications hit him $12 million per container. He was hauling $24 million in illegal funds across state lines. This wasn't contraband. This was industrial-scale financial crime that probably financed half the criminal activity in the Southwest. His first instinct was pure panic. Getting caught with this cargo meant federal prison and asset forfeiture that would destroy what little he'd managed to save over 30 years. Getting caught stealing from it meant disappearing permanently and never being seen again. But as the initial shock wore off, curiosity took over. Billy Crawford had always been a natural problem solver, and this was the biggest, most dangerous problem he'd ever encountered. The kind of problem that could either destroy him completely or change his life forever. Over the next hour, while Carlos handled paperwork and made more phone calls inside the truck stop, Billy used every trick he'd learned in 30 years of mechanical troubleshooting and repair work. A small mirror mounted on a telescoping rod, the exact type used for checking hard-to-reach engine components, allowed him to peer inside container number 1 through a tiny gap where the door seal had shifted during loading. What he saw changed everything he thought he knew about his employer and his cargo. Swiss bank deposit boxes stacked floor to ceiling in perfect rows, each one stamped with official seals and serial numbers, gold bars catching the overhead security lights, arranged with military precision like some Hollywood movie vault. Bundles of cash wrapped in authentic bank paper, all hundreds and fifties with Federal Reserve bands still intact. Billy's $2,000 fee suddenly felt like the insult it obviously was. He was risking federal conspiracy charges to move $24 million for a fraction of 1% commission while taking all the legal risks if anything went wrong. Footsteps on gravel made him freeze in place. Carlos was walking back toward the truck, phone pressed to his ear, speaking in rapid Spanish to someone who was clearly very unhappy about something involving missing money and suspicious timing. Billy quickly stowed the mirror device and pretended to check his load-securing straps. His heart hammered so loudly he was certain Carlos would hear it from 20 feet away. "Everything good back here, Billy?" Carlos asked, suspicion creeping into his voice as he approached the trailer. "Just making sure we're properly balanced," Billy replied, forcing his voice to remain steady and professional. "Truck was pulling slightly left earlier. Must be the load distribution or maybe tire pressure differences." Carlos walked completely around the trailer, checking the container seals and door latches with the thoroughness of someone who'd learned not to trust anyone completely. Billy held his breath, praying the man wouldn't notice the tiny gap where he'd inserted the mirror or the almost imperceptible scratches around the seal area. After what felt like an hour, but was probably only 30 seconds, Carlos nodded with apparent satisfaction and climbed back into his Suburban. Billy exhaled slowly and started his truck engine, with hands that were still shaking slightly. $24 million. More money than he would see in 10 lifetimes of legitimate trucking, riding just 6 feet behind his head in containers he wasn't supposed to know anything about. The drive to Phoenix was absolute agony. Every mile marker felt like a year passing. Billy's mind raced with possibilities, calculations, and terrifying scenarios, while he maintained normal speed and radio contact with the escort vehicles. He was carrying proof of a massive money laundering operation that probably involved dozens of businesses and hundreds of millions in illegal transfers. Carlos and his associates weren't just simple smugglers moving contraband across state lines. They were key operators in a sophisticated network that was processing hundreds of millions in criminal profits through legitimate American businesses, probably funding criminal operations across multiple states. Billy studied the operation methodically. 3 pickup warehouses near the border, all using the same shell freight company. Deliveries went to businesses dealing in precious metals and jewelry, operations perfect for processing large amounts of gold and cash without federal scrutiny. His handlers were Mexican cartel, but clients were American businessmen. Billy was the invisible middleman, moving dirty money for pennies. He also learned about his predecessor through conversations at truck stops and driver lounges. Jake Morales had driven for the cartel for 2 years before quitting suddenly in March 2021, just 3 months before Billy got hired. The story that emerged from other drivers was both chilling and instructive. "Jake was a solid driver," said Eddie Vasquez, a veteran hauler who'd known Jake for over a decade. "But he started asking too many questions about his cargo, wanting to know what was really in those containers. Next thing you know, he's gone without notice. Company said he moved to California to drive for his brother-in-law, but his ex-wife never heard from him again." Another driver, Tom Rodriguez, was more direct about Jake's fate. "Word on the CB is Jake turned up dead in a ditch outside Juarez with 2 bullets in his head. Officially, he just disappeared without forwarding address. But guys who haul for the cartels don't just disappear voluntarily." Billy calculated the financial numbers obsessively during his off-duty hours. In 6 months of driving, he'd moved approximately $300 million in laundered money across state lines. His total earnings, $48,000 before expenses. The cartel was paying him roughly 0.016% of the cargo value, while he absorbed 100% of the legal risks. That's when Billy Crawford made the decision that would change everything. He was going to take his proper cut. Planning the first theft required 2 weeks of careful preparation and research. Billy studied container security systems, timing windows, and detection methods used by professional cargo thieves. The plastic seals were laughably easy to defeat with proper tools, but replacing them required identical zip ties and careful attention to serial number sequences. His initial target was deliberately modest, a single $100 bill extracted from the middle of a $50,000 cash bundle. Billy practiced the extraction technique using his own money until he could remove a bill with precision tweezers without disturbing the bank wrapper or leaving obvious evidence. The opportunity came during a routine fuel stop in Deming, New Mexico. Carlos was inside the truck stop paying for diesel and handling his mysterious phone business, while Billy performed his mandatory pre-trip inspection. 30 seconds with the telescoping mirror to locate the target. 15 seconds to position the extraction tools. Another 15 seconds to complete the theft. As Billy carefully pocketed the stolen bill, footsteps approached on the gravel. Carlos was returning earlier than expected, phone still pressed to his ear as he conducted what sounded like another heated argument in Spanish. "What are you doing back there, Billy?" Carlos asked, suspicion clear in his voice as he approached the trailer. Billy held up his tire pressure gauge with studied casualness. "Checking load balance again. Truck's been pulling left since we left El Paso. Thought maybe one of the containers might have shifted during loading." Carlos walked completely around the trailer, examining the container seals and door latches with professional thoroughness. Billy forced himself to breathe normally and maintain eye contact, knowing any sign of nervousness would trigger a complete search of both truck and driver. "Everything looks secure to me," Carlos finally concluded, "but keep monitoring that pulling sensation. Last thing we need is a breakdown or accident that brings state police attention." Billy nodded professionally and climbed back into his cab. His heart was pounding like a jackhammer, but he'd passed the crucial first test. More importantly, he'd proven that theft was not only possible, but relatively simple with proper preparation and timing. Success made him significantly bolder. Over the next month, Billy refined his theft techniques and escalated gradually according to a carefully planned schedule. Week 1. Single bills extracted from different cash bundles across multiple containers. $500 total value. Week 2. Small pieces of jewelry that wouldn't be missed immediately during routine inventory. $2,000 estimated value. Week 3. 2 thin gold wafers carefully shaved from larger bars using precision tools. Approximately $5,000 worth of pure gold. Each theft was meticulously calculated to stay well below established detection thresholds. Billy studied shrinkage rates in legitimate shipping operations where 0.1% losses were considered normal business expenses. He kept his thefts well below that statistical level, spreading them across multiple containers and shipments to avoid creating patterns. But during week 3, Carlos's partner, Miguel, made an unscheduled inspection that nearly ended Billy's criminal career before it properly began. Billy was in the middle of shaving gold wafers from a bar when headlights appeared in his side mirrors. Miguel's pickup truck was approaching the rest area where Billy had stopped for his mandatory DOT break, arriving 2 hours earlier than any previous inspection. There was absolutely no time to properly replace the container seal or clean up evidence of tampering. Billy shoved his cutting tools into a hidden compartment and rolled under the truck just as Miguel's boots hit the gravel parking lot. "Billy, you under there, man?" Miguel called out in accented English. "Yeah, checking for hydraulic leaks," Billy replied, forcing complete casualness into his voice while lying on his back with stolen gold in his pockets. "Think I heard something dripping during the last fuel stop." Miguel walked directly to the containers and began examining the seals with a small flashlight. Billy held his breath, knowing the fresh cuts would be completely obvious under close inspection. But Miguel seemed more focused on the door latches and locking mechanisms than the plastic seal ties. "Everything looks good from out here," Miguel reported to Carlos over his handheld radio. "Driver seems a little nervous, though maybe we should start watching him more closely on future runs." Billy waited until Miguel's taillights disappeared completely before emerging from under the truck. The close call should have ended his theft operations immediately, but instead it taught him valuable lessons about timing, preparation, and the importance of better cover stories for future operations. He needed to become much smarter about the technical aspects of the thefts. Billy spent 3 months preparing his first major score. He bought lead bars, gold paint, and precision equipment. His garage became a counterfeiting lab where he practiced until fake gold bars were indistinguishable from real ones. The target for his first major theft was carefully selected after weeks of surveillance and planning, a container carrying exactly 100 gold bars with an estimated value of $4.8 million. Billy planned to replace 12 bars with lead duplicates, stealing approximately $480,000 while keeping the theft below 10% of the total cargo value. The heist took place during a severe thunderstorm near Roswell, New Mexico. Perfect natural cover. Lightning provided a believable explanation for any electronic malfunctions or communication disruptions that might occur during the operation. Billy pulled into a remote rest area and immediately activated his carefully prepared plan. First, he cut power to his truck's GPS tracking system using a pre-installed electrical fault that would appear to be storm damage to any investigator. Then he opened container number 2. Using professional tools hidden in his sleeper compartment, working by flashlight in the pouring rain, Billy systematically replaced 12 gold bars with painted lead duplicates. He used his precision digital scale to verify exact weights, ensuring the container's total mass remained completely unchanged. Each fake bar had been individually aged and weathered to match the originals perfectly. The entire operation took exactly 43 minutes from start to finish. Billy was in the process of resealing the container when headlights appeared on the highway. New Mexico State Police responding to his pre-planned electrical emergency call for assistance. The responding trooper was young, maybe 25 years old, with the eager helpfulness of someone relatively new to law enforcement. "Having some trouble out here tonight?" he asked, examining Billy's truck with professional concern. "Alternator's acting up pretty bad," Billy explained, showing fake diagnostic readings on a handheld electronic meter. "Lightning must have fried something in the charging system. Think I got it sorted out now, though." Billy had prepared extensively for exactly this scenario. His toolkit contained authentic alternator parts, genuine repair manuals, and complete documentation showing a realistic history of electrical problems with his truck. The trooper even volunteered to help him reconnect a battery cable that had been deliberately loosened. "Drive safe out there," the officer advised. "These desert storms can be absolutely brutal on vehicle electronics, especially older trucks like yours." Billy watched the patrol car disappear into the storm before allowing himself to smile with satisfaction. He'd just executed the perfect crime, stealing nearly $500,000 in gold while state police helped him establish an alibi for the timing. The stolen gold bars were concealed in specially designed compartments that had been professionally welded into his truck's chassis over several weeks. To any casual inspector, they appeared to be standard structural reinforcements designed to handle heavy loads. Even trained drug detection dogs wouldn't alert to gold bars. But success brought new challenges and increased scrutiny. Carlos began noticing minor timing discrepancies in delivery schedules that suggested something unusual was happening during transport. Billy's electrical problems and mechanical breakdowns were creating a pattern that a suspicious mind might eventually connect to the missing cargo. 2 weeks after the successful gold bar theft, Carlos installed military-grade motion sensors in all containers. "These devices are extremely sophisticated," Carlos explained, showing Billy a sensor unit about the size of a smartphone. "They detect any container opening that lasts longer than 60 seconds and immediately transmit alerts to our security monitoring system. False alarms result in expensive additional security fees, so don't mess with the containers unless there's a genuine emergency." Billy nodded with apparent understanding while mentally filing away crucial technical information. Motion sensors meant he needed to significantly upgrade his theft capabilities and develop countermeasures for electronic surveillance systems. Billy spent 3 months mastering electronics and building signal jammers. He practiced opening containers in 59 seconds while maintaining perfect environmental conditions. His next target, $2.8 million cash shipment. He prepared newspaper bundles wrapped in authentic bank paper to replace the stolen money. The heist operation took place during another mechanical breakdown. Billy jammed the sensors and replaced $400,000 with newspaper bundles. 58 seconds total. As he transferred the stolen money to hidden compartments throughout his truck, Miguel's vehicle appeared unexpectedly in the distance. Another unscheduled inspection, but this time, Billy was completely prepared with better cover stories and props. Hydraulic leaks definitely getting worse, Billy announced, pointing to transmission fluid he'd strategically sprayed on the ground for visual authenticity. Going to need a real mechanic when we reach Vegas, or this truck won't make it back to El Paso. Miguel conducted a thorough examination of the truck, but discovered nothing suspicious. The stolen cash was concealed in compartments designed to look exactly like standard hydraulic fluid reservoirs. Even if Miguel had opened them for inspection, he would have seen only transmission fluid and mechanical components. "Get it repaired quickly," Miguel instructed. "Carlos doesn't tolerate delays or mechanical problems that might attract police attention during breakdowns." But Billy understood that the surveillance net was tightening around him. Carlos had begun following his truck with small drones, checking odometer readings for unauthorized mileage and timing every fuel stop and rest break. They clearly suspected someone was stealing from the shipments, but hadn't yet identified the specific source of the losses. That's when Billy spotted what would become his ultimate opportunity: a super shipment scheduled for September 2024 that would be the largest single money transfer in the operation's entire history. Intelligence gathered from carefully overheard conversations indicated this shipment would contain $15 million in gold bars being moved from cartel collection points in El Paso to money laundering operations in Las Vegas. The planning phase consumed 4 full months of intensive preparation. Billy systematically bribed a truck stop mechanic to provide legitimate breakdown documentation and repair cover stories. He prepared precision lead bar replacements for exactly 200 gold bars. He studied the planned route obsessively, identifying the perfect location for conducting a 6-hour theft operation without detection. Everything had to execute flawlessly. This would be his retirement score. Enough money to disappear permanently and start a completely new life under a different identity. September 2nd, 11:30 p.m. Billy activated his prepared engine trouble scenario at a remote rest area outside Albuquerque that was supposedly closed for renovation work. The location provided complete privacy and isolation from potential witnesses or law enforcement patrols. Billy deployed his full array of electronic countermeasures and began the most ambitious theft in modern cartel history. The containers held exactly what his intelligence gathering had predicted: 200 gold bars with a total value of approximately $15 million in current market prices. Billy worked methodically and systematically, replacing each authentic gold bar with a carefully prepared lead duplicate and transferring the real gold to hidden compartments distributed throughout his truck's chassis and cargo areas. 3 hours into the operation, headlights appeared in the distance, moving at high speed. Billy's heart stopped completely. The approaching vehicles belonged to Carlos's security convoy, 3 SUVs approaching the rest area much earlier than any previous inspection schedule. There was absolutely no time to complete the operation properly or clean up evidence of the theft. Billy grabbed as many gold bars as physically possible and rolled under his truck just as the convoy arrived, millions of dollars in stolen gold pressed against his chest as he lay motionless in the dirt and gravel. "Driver's probably sleeping in his cab," one of Carlos's men said in Spanish, "but something doesn't feel right about this breakdown. Check those containers thoroughly for any signs of tampering." Billy counted at least 4 sets of boots walking around his truck in the darkness. Through the gap between the chassis and ground, he could see their faces clearly: hard men carrying weapons, systematically looking for any evidence of theft or tampering. One security team member spotted fresh tool marks on container number 1. "These scratches look recent," he reported. "Maybe from tonight." Carlos examined the marks personally with a powerful flashlight. "Nah, just normal wear and tear. These containers take serious beatings on rough roads and during loading operations." The inspection continued for 23 agonizing minutes. Billy's legs went completely numb from maintaining the same cramped position, but he didn't dare move even slightly. Finally, the boots walked away, and engine sounds indicated the convoy was departing. "False alarm," Carlos reported over his radio system. "Driver checks out clean. Probably just legitimate bad luck with mechanical problems." Billy waited until the tail lights completely disappeared before crawling out from under the truck. He'd successfully stolen approximately $8 million in gold bars, but security cameras at the supposedly closed truck stop had recorded the entire operation from multiple angles. Discovery was absolutely inevitable. Billy estimated he had maybe 12 hours before the theft was detected and the manhunt began. He quickly completed his fake repairs and drove toward Las Vegas, knowing this would be his final delivery for the cartel. At the casino delivery point, he watched surveillance cameras tracking his every movement. The personnel unloading his containers were different from previous deliveries. Harder looking, more suspicious, obviously enhanced security. Billy collected his final $2,000 payment and drove away from the casino, immediately implementing the escape plan he'd been developing for months. By 6 a.m., the casino's professional assay equipment revealed the lead bar substitutions. Carlos's security team discovered sophisticated GPS jamming equipment and other evidence of the theft operation. Billy's truck was located at a budget motel in Henderson, Nevada, but Billy had completely vanished using backup vehicles and false identity documents he'd prepared months in advance. The chase began immediately across 4 southwestern states. The cartel mobilized every available resource: cash bribes at truck stops and gas stations, license plate recognition systems on major highways, cell phone tower triangulation technology, and extensive networks of sympathizers and informants across the entire region. But Billy had 30 years of comprehensive highway knowledge working in his favor. He knew which back roads avoided traffic cameras, which truck stops operated off official records, and which drivers would help a fellow trucker in trouble without asking uncomfortable questions about the circumstances. The first serious close call occurred in Flagstaff, Arizona. A cartel search team swept through the truck stop where Billy was refueling his stolen pickup truck, but he'd hidden in another driver's sleeper cab until the danger passed. The second near miss happened at a police roadblock outside Gallup, New Mexico. Billy took a dangerous detour through known cartel territory, risking immediate capture to avoid potential federal detection. The most dangerous moment came at a remote gas station in Farmington, New Mexico. The elderly attendant clearly recognized Billy from a cartel bulletin offering $100,000 for information leading to his capture. Billy saw the recognition dawning in the man's eyes and was gone before the phone call could connect to cartel security. Throughout the multi-state chase, Billy carried his ultimate insurance policy: 3 complete years of evidence documenting the entire money laundering operation in extraordinary detail, digital photographs of container contents, GPS tracking logs showing delivery routes and timing, comprehensive financial records of his systematic thefts, and detailed information about names, dates, and locations of cartel operations. The evidence represented far more than personal protection. It constituted proof of a $200 million annual money laundering network that had operated completely undetected by federal law enforcement for years. FBI agent Sarah Chen made initial contact through CB radio emergency frequencies on Billy's 3rd day as a federal fugitive. Billy Crawford, this is Agent Chen with federal law enforcement. We know exactly what you've been doing, and we know what you've discovered about the cartel operation. Surrender voluntarily with your evidence, and we'll provide complete federal protection. How do I know you're really FBI and not cartel? Billy asked, keying his radio from a hidden position in the Colorado mountains. Because we've been tracking this specific money laundering operation for over 2 years as part of a joint FBI-DEA investigation. Your theft activities triggered our investigation protocols. You've just provided us with the biggest breakthrough in the entire case. Agent Chen explained the complex federal situation in detail. Billy's systematic thefts had inadvertently exposed Operation Desert Wash, a massive joint investigation into southwestern cartel money laundering that had been stalled for months due to lack of concrete evidence. His detailed documentation provided proof that federal agents had been completely unable to obtain through traditional surveillance methods. Your testimony could destroy the entire criminal network, Chen explained. We're prepared to offer complete immunity from prosecution, permanent witness protection with new identity, and a substantial federal reward for your full cooperation with our investigation. Billy's stolen pickup truck broke down in the remote Montana wilderness on September 15th, exactly 12 days after the Las Vegas theft. The pursuing black SUV had been following him for over 200 miles, maintaining just close enough contact to keep him under visual surveillance. His CB radio crackled with intercepted cartel communications. Target vehicle immobilized at grid reference 847, all units move in for final collection. Billy quickly fortified his defensive position in an abandoned mining station that had been closed since the 1970s. Using his CB radio's emergency broadcast frequency, he began transmitting evidence and intelligence to every law enforcement agency within communication range. This is Billy Crawford broadcasting critical intelligence about major cartel money laundering operations. I have complete documentation of $200 million in annual illegal transfers through legitimate American businesses. The media response was absolutely immediate and overwhelming. News organizations across the entire Southwest picked up the emergency broadcasts within minutes. Within just a few hours, trucker steals $15 million from cartel, dominated newspaper headlines from Denver to Phoenix to Los Angeles. Billy instantly became a folk hero, the highway Robin Hood who single-handedly took on organized crime and lived to tell the story. Social media platforms exploded with support for Desert Driver Billy. Truckers across America organized rallies demanding federal protection for the man who'd exposed widespread cartel corruption. Federal law enforcement resources mobilized with completely unprecedented speed and coordination. A helicopter extraction team launched immediately from Denver. Joint FBI-DEA task forces activated simultaneously in 4 states to investigate the exposed money laundering network. Congressional leaders scheduled emergency hearings on border security and cartel infiltration. The cartel organization faced an immediate existential threat to their entire American operation. Their carefully constructed $200 million money laundering system was completely exposed to federal investigation. Casino partnerships were terminated immediately. Multiple arrests began occurring across the Southwest. Internal security investigations started to identify and eliminate potential information leaks. Billy's isolated position was surrounded by 6 heavily armed cartel operatives when the FBI rescue helicopter appeared over the mountain ridge. Cartel gunmen immediately opened fire on federal agents, rappelling down extraction ropes, while Billy coordinated the rescue operation over CB radio emergency frequencies. This is Desert Driver federal agents taking heavy automatic weapons fire. Exact grid coordinates 47.243, 1 north, 114.1583 west. Need immediate backup and medical support for extraction operation. The firefight lasted exactly 12 minutes. According to federal after-action reports, Carlos Mendez was killed while actively resisting arrest and threatening federal agents. 2 other cartel security operatives died during the gun battle. Billy was successfully extracted under combat conditions, immediately becoming the most valuable witness in federal law enforcement custody. Federal prosecutors offered Billy a deal he couldn't possibly refuse: complete immunity from all criminal prosecution in exchange for full cooperation with ongoing investigations, permanent witness protection program enrollment with completely new identity, and the legal right to keep $5 million as an official federal reward for exposing the massive money laundering network. Billy's detailed testimony completely destroyed the cartel's American money laundering operations. 89 separate indictments were issued across the entire network. $400 million in criminal assets were seized by federal agencies. Multiple casino executives were arrested for knowing participation in money laundering. Border security protocols were completely restructured to prevent similar operations. The subsequent trials transformed Billy into a national celebrity and folk hero. Truckers nationwide organized massive rallies supporting Highway Billy. Social media campaigns demanded a presidential pardon for his patriotic service. Documentary film rights were sold for $2 million to a major Hollywood studio. But Billy's new protected identity came with a permanent cost of complete isolation. He could never contact anyone from his previous life under any circumstances. The surviving cartel leadership had placed a $10 million bounty on his head, payable to anyone who could locate and eliminate him. He lived under constant federal protection, finding his only remaining purpose in testifying against organized crime operations. 2 years after the trials concluded, Billy Crawford officially died in a staged Montana car accident. His funeral service was attended by federal agents and a few old truckers who'd known him for decades. The man buried in Billings Cemetery had lived 56 years as Billy Crawford, legitimate truck driver. But Frank Morrison, a gray-haired trucker wearing wire-rimmed glasses, quietly began driving the highways of the Southwest in a modest Peterbilt truck. His CB radio handle became Desert Driver, and his distinctive voice became familiar to truckers across the entire region. Mysterious anonymous tips started reaching FBI field offices on a regular basis. Detailed reports about suspicious cargo movements, always accompanied by precise intelligence that led to major arrests and seizures. Border Patrol agents learned to monitor CB broadcasts from Desert Driver, knowing they consistently indicated genuine criminal activity requiring immediate investigation. Billy Crawford had become the ghost of the American highway system, completely invisible but ever present, protecting the roads he knew better than anyone else alive. The cartel remnant still actively hunted him, but they were chasing a legend who existed only in CB radio transmissions and sealed federal witness files. The truck stop near Sierra Blanca, where Billy first discovered the cartel money, became his favorite location for coffee and quiet contemplation. Sitting in his rig with CB radio crackling, he watched other drivers refuel and wondered what kind of cargo they might be carrying. "Desert Driver to all units," his familiar voice carried across the airwaves. "Suspicious convoy moving southbound on Highway 25. Multiple vehicles with inadequate documentation. Strongly recommend immediate federal inspection." Some legends never really end. They just change frequencies and keep protecting people. Billy Crawford stole $15 million from the cartel and lived to tell about it. More importantly, he used that theft to expose a criminal network that had operated with complete impunity for years. Sometimes the only way to stop crime is to out-criminal the criminals. Subscribe if you think sometimes breaking the law is the only way to expose real criminals. Hit that like button if you believe Billy was a hero, not a thief. And tell me in the comments, would you have taken that first $100 bill if you discovered millions in criminal money? Because that single decision changed everything.